Welcome to the seventh episode of If You're Not First, You're Last. Uh, I know you're all saying, how could it possibly be the seventh episode? It seems like just yesterday was episode two, but no, it's the seventh one. That's how fast we're going here. And this episode is on the Nameless One, um, the purple one himself, Prince. Very excited to talk about this groundbreaking artist of our childhoods. Um, and of course, you cannot talk about Prince without talking about Michael Jackson. Of course, those are the two kind of. It's kind of interesting, I think, as in your childhood, either you're a Prince child or you're a Michael Jackson child from the 1980s. And I was definitely a Prince child, although I do very distinctly remember having the Thriller album. If my parents had 42 albums, most of them being Neil Diamond, but there was somehow in there was that one album by the great Michael Jackson, but Prince was definitely more my speed. Always was. How about for you in your childhood? Were you more of a Jackson childhood, or were you more of a Prince childhood?
It was a Jackson. I think Michael Jackson was my first crush, actually. Yeah, I remember I had a notebook of his, a notebook with him in his Human Nature outfit on the cover. And my dad drew a picture of him inside, and I got mad because I felt it didn't showcase his handsomeness enough. And I got mad because my mom would refused to buy me a glove, and it was the one MTV thing I was allowed to watch was Michael Jackson Thriller or his stuff. I had his album, and in fifth grade, our teacher brought in Moonwalker for us to watch, and yeah, so I was more of a huge Michael Jackson. I was honestly very confused by Prince when I was little.
It's I think the great joke is, of course, that there was the flip, like in 92, 93, where your parents were terrified of Prince, and then all of a sudden allegations, and then one has been married and has, it turns out to be a Jehovah's Witness of all things. And that switch happened, but definitely for our childhood, Prince was the scary one. So
not that, I mean, you see all the heavy metal guys with the hair and the makeup, but I feel like Prince is the one who really brought it. And Bowie, but Prince, I just remember seeing, like, I think my aunt or one of her friends, because they were in high school, she's 9 years older than me, had probably like a Tiger Beat or some kind of magazine, and it had Prince performing just wearing a jacket and underwear, and I was just like, this man isn't wearing pants on stage. I mean, I was 8 years old, and I'm like, now why would someone not wear pants on stage? It was more that. It was like, why is he, can you do that? Can you just go out like that?
I do think it's interesting for both of us. I think our childhood kind of set up that Michael Jackson was a wholesome one. Like you look at Billie Jean video where he's just walking and lights are showing up. And you're like, yay, lights. And then the first image you have of Prince, if you're watching MTV, is When Doves Cry, and he's crawling out of a bathtub directly towards you with this look of, this is not going to go well for you, kind of thing. And there's a danger to his early stuff. So do you remember the first song of his that really was exciting for you? You're like, oh, who is this? I love this. What was it?
I mean, I had heard Kiss, but I did not like it. So I would have to say probably When Doves Cry was the first one that and Little Red Corvette, which I thought just always a fun song. But When Doves Cry was something that provoked an emotion.
Yeah.
Where like I'm getting feelings from this, and I don't know what it is. Like, it's not in like a discovering hormones way, but just like, why does this song sound so pretty and sad, but also it's not slow like a sad song?
Yeah,
it's got a beat. You think it's going to be a dance song, but it's actually sad.
Yeah, it's funny because when I took Shakespeare and kind of, I was just be a lot of weird analogies in this episode just because of how big Prince is. But when I took Shakespeare in college, I was very excited, and then my teacher turned out to be like a pervert, and everything was about sex. And I think there's something about, like you mentioned, Little Red Corvette, which is once you get of a certain age, or someone will tell you, that song's about sex, and then they explain it to you, and you're like, oh, every Prince song is about sex in a certain way or another, and it's like every Shakespeare play is about sex. So it's kind of hard to kind of separate the two. But Little Red Corvette was one of those that when someone revealed, like Blister in the Sun, the same thing. Those two songs, like, that song's about sex, and then you explain, like, oh, okay. Like, sometimes they're like, we're gonna get into song titles at a certain point, but he both was literal and figurative with it, which is interesting. Like usually you're either one or the other, but he was playing with it so much. So when we get started, as we
say I think because he was so blatant and so many were
just
obvious that then you can't tell with the other ones. He's like, which I think is a good talent.
Oh no, like you can enjoy just like Shakespeare. I did not need to know once across the wall, breached your friends and close her wall with her English dead. It's a sexual reference. It's not. Sorry, perverted Shakespeare teacher. But yes, Little Corvette is a sexual innuendo song. So as we get started, of course, little background information on Prince. He was born and died in the same amazing city, Minneapolis. Has any artist ever been more signified with a city than Prince? Like Prince is Minneapolis. He is the Twin Cities. Born in 1958. So his first album came out when he was 20 years old, which is amazing. And then he died in 2016, April. So we had him on this coil for about 57, 58 years. So to begin with, let's start off with your top 10, then I'll give my top 10.
All right. So I have no particular order. I just had to think of the songs that I absolutely love, or I look on my playlist and I have the little heart next to them in Spotify. And then I had to kind of break it down a little more from there. And then I have a couple of runners up. But it's hard because he has so many good songs.
This is the hardest 10 I've ever had to make in my life.
Yeah. I was like, I don't even know how to do this. Like, I'm even changing it as we speak. Like, no, I've moved this one down now. But all right. So I would say number one would be When Doves Cry, because that was my big Prince song. And I also really enjoy Raspberry Beret, for the Radioheads. I love the Raspberry Beret. Let's Go Crazy. Diamonds and Pearls. I think that came out in middle school. And that was also big when I was like, oh, I think I like Prince. Like not just the radio, even though it was the radio, but like it was a very ballady song.
Yeah.
I was like, there's something kind of sexy about it, but I don't know how to describe it because I haven't even had a kiss. But there's something here. Erotic City, Something in the Water, which I had hit big hearts on. What else did I say? I Want to Be Your Lover. That's a very fun disco song. Get Off. Did I say, where am I? I said Raspberry Beret, When Doves Cry, Erotic, Say Something in the Water, Let's Go Crazy, Diamonds and Pearls, Nothing Compares to You.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about him covering it.
Yes, of course. Yes.
But his is a completely different interpretation. I Want to Be Your Lover, Get Off. And then I got really stuck.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I like Little Red Corvette. I love Purple Rain. I also like Bat Dance.
We're going to get into that.
I'm going to have to say, I'm going to go Purple Rain for my last one.
Fantastic. Okay, so because of my spectrumness, I had to do a top 10. And I had to put them in order. And I changed the order several times. Number 10, Controversy. Number 9, You Got the Look. Number 8, Cream. Number 7, Darling Nikki. Maybe the most awkward moment of my life is listening to Darling Nikki in my house and my parents walking in as the opening lyrics of that song come on. Look them up. I'm not going to say it, but just look it up. It's fantastic.
It's going to have that a lot of his songs.
Yeah, but that one, it's just but that one, right off the bat, it's just like, oh, magazine.
Okay. I was looking at that one and I was like, I blush just even looking at the title, so I can't even put it in.
To me, that song is him being a gunfighter almost. It's like the guitar is like a side strap, and he's just in concert. I've seen him once, and it literally is one of those great moments, is the Darling Nikki moment, because he's like a bandolero in that moment. It's very interesting. 1999 is my number 6. Let's Go Crazy. Number 5, Get Off is 4, which I did not expect, but in doing this podcast rerun, I really felt like, as much as Purple Rain is my era of what I love most about Prince, the second most is Strawberries and Cream or Diamonds and Pearl. That era is just incredible. Like, it's just
good.
To do that 14 years into a career, to be that broad and that smart and like just understand where music's going. It's just there's moments of that where he literally has like this Big Daddy Kane energy to his lyrics, like this real robust rap style to, which is amazing. Kiss, which I did not expect to be my top 10, but there's something about it. And the more you understand Prince, to understand that he's a big Chuck Berry person. And that song has this Chuck Berry energy to it, or this James Brown energy to it, that's very interesting to him, and that's number 3. 2, When Doves Cry. One of my favorite stories is, and we'll talk about his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, which basically became the Prince show. But one of the other inductees for that night was ZZ Top. And the guitarist for ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons, is literally Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitarist. When Jimi Hendrix was alive, his favorite guitarist was Billy Gibbons. Now think about that. And Billy Gibbons, as he was walking the red carpet, said, "I have been trying to play the opening guitar lick of When Doves Cries for 25 years, and I can't figure it out. I've listened to it. I've looked at it. I can't figure out how he plays it." This is Billy Gibbons again. Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitarist. His favorite guitarist is Prince. Okay, and that's not the best thing he does. Like, that's crazy. That opening lick of When Doves Cry is nuts. It's absolutely crazy. If you listen to it, he does it at the Super Bowl with Beyonce, and it is electric. And the number 1 is Purple Rain. We're gonna get into how important that movie was, and how big that was, and how no one else has done that as a musician. Like other things, we talked about Bowie and his movie stuff. Lady Gaga with her film, musicians.
Purple Rain is like basically starring in your own.
Yeah, and writing all the music. And again, if you ask me who are the 10 greatest villains in the history of film, Morris Day and the Times is probably like number 7. And we'll get more into Purple Rain, but Purple Rain, the song, the album, everything. It was 1984 was the year of Prince. That was as big as an artist could ever get. As big as, yes, Beat It and Thriller is the biggest album of all time. Purple Rain was just a different level. Okay, so that's on my top 10. Some honorable mentions, of course, Diamonds and Pearl, Sign of the Times, gigantic song, Delirious, and we're gonna talk about the first and last albums, both amazing. But one of the things that I found interesting in doing a lot of research and kind of looking at him is that he is almost a mythical figure. Like, we saw him do these things, and we're going to talk about these big moments of his career, and we saw them, but when you tell some about them, they don't seem real. Like, to start off with, there's the famous Dave Chappelle story that Troy Murphy tells about him playing basketball, and how they're playing basketball in high heels and like everything, and they beat Troy Murphy and his friends at basketball at 3:00 in the morning. They feed some pancakes, and members of the time say that story is 100% true. Troy Murphy did not embellish this story at all. It is absolutely true. So I kind of want to set that as a piece of these kind of Prince moments that kind of led to this kind of, again, he's a mythical. His name's Prince. Like, he's so smart.
That's his name.
Yeah, his name is Prince. And then you have these stories like that about him just doing things that no one else could do. Prince as the figure, is there a specific moment that you look at and go, wow, this guy was just different, and just a different level of fame, a different level of talent?
I mean, I think the thing is just he was no imitation with him.
Right.
You'll have people that still now will try to do the glam rock androgynous. Like, it's usually they'll go Bowie or something like that. But you can't really do a Prince look and make it your look.
Right.
Prince, the thing I think is that thinking about, I had personally never it wasn't even the makeup or the heels so much. It was just this man refused to wear pants, hold an entire pair of pants for such a big part. And usually that'd be, I'm sure there were people that tease it, but I just remember be like, they're just like, yeah, that's just how Prince is. They're either going to be tight or chaps. I don't know what do you want us to do? It was just unabashedly himself. He did not care. All these things he did were things, especially in the 80s, it seemed that he would get teased for, and I'm sure people did. But at the same time, there's the famous quote, Prince is, the only short man who can wear high heels and makeup and steal your woman. That was like the big quote in the 80s and 90s, because he was just so confident. And it's also interesting, the older I got, what I found interesting is he was raised Seventh-day Adventist and later converted to become a Jehovah's Witness. And if you know anything about those two religions, you're not like, yep, if anything says sexy, it's, the Jehovah's Witness or Seventh-day Adventist, which it's probably why he mostly was known for not having a big party lifestyle. Right. And, with his death, it was mainly due to painting, because those are, at least SDA, that it's encouraging vegetarianism and things like that. But it's just funny because I know when I was a kid, the church was not claiming him. And then when he died, like, did you know he was raised SDA? And it's like, no, wait, what? You guys used to talk about how bad he was. But yeah, that was funny, because you would think those are very think of those as more conservative in the Protestant religions.
Right.
And he never denounced them or anything, but he was like, yep, I believe in this. And also, I am walking sex. I don't know what to tell you. That is just how I am.
To me, what I think those two religions have in common, what Prince has in common with them is control. And it's interesting because, it's the word control. And Prince controlled his ideology. He controlled everything. He controlled his sexuality in a way. He said, it's mine. I'm going to control it. I'm going to play every instrument on this album. I am in control in a way that very few other artists are. And again, he is in control of his life. He was never out of. There's no stories about him, being drunk at a bar at 4 o'clock in the morning and slapping it. Because he was in control, and his music is about control. Again, he comes from this great funk background. Again, George Clinton is. If you listen to that first album, there's several influences, but the George Clinton element in it's gigantic. And then there's this weird mod stuff, but it's all about him being in control of something, which is interesting because, again, he was the man who brought Jimmy Jam and Terry Gordon to light, and then they went on to do all the great Janet Jackson albums. And her first single with him was Control, and it's kind of this weird thing that he did not write a song called Control, even though he was the biggest control freak probably in the history of music, in a very specific way, not a controlling way like Kubrick, but in this way where he was manipulative in a beautiful way, I would say. But like I said, I'm a huge George Clinton person. I've seen him live 6 times. I put weed into his bucket each time very happily. He's a huge influence in those early albums. But at the same time, there's these kind of fun mod elements. And again, like I said earlier, he's one of the greatest guitar players of all time, but he's also like, you don't hear it on every album. It's just these moments and stuff. I have a couple stories that I love to talk about with him, which is Margaret Cho, the female comic, has one joke about Prince, but it's my favorite joke, which is, and it's such a weird story, but she swears it's true. Her friend was on a bus in Minneapolis, and Prince got on the bus, which means that makes no sense.
Like a public bus?
A public bus.
Huh.
And and then he walks up to this woman who's like, oh my God, it's Prince. And he looks right at her. He goes, do you know who Prince is? And she goes, yes. He goes, good. And he just sits down. And Margaret Cho says, man, someday I'm going to be that awesome. And I'm going to be able to tell someone, I'm going to walk up to someone at a weird location that I shouldn't be in. I'm going to look them straight in the eyes and go, do you know who Prince is? And it's such a great joke, and I just love, like, again, none of that story makes sense, but again, she swears it's true. It's my favorite joke of hers. And then the second story is Carlos Boozer was a basketball player that played for the Lakers and then for the Utah Jazz, and he had a beautiful house. It was his first big contract. He bought this like mansion in LA, because he's first big contract of his life. He's excited, but then he gets traded to Utah, and he's got to live in Utah for most of the year. So he has his house, and he gets a phone call from his agent. Says, "Listen, Prince wants to rent your house out for a year and record an album there." He's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, Prince likes your house. He's gonna rent it out." And then he says, "Okay." Comes back to the house 6 months later. He said, "I had all these beautiful like stone lions and stuff like outside the gates. They're gone, and the house is painted purple. The whole house is painted purple. None of my stuff is there, and I freak out." So he calls his agent. He says, "Let me call him." And Prince says, "No problem." Gives him $100,000 extra from what he paid him, like way too much money for this house for a year. But he gave him the money, gave him another $100,000. He said, "When I came back at the end of the year, all my stuff was back, and it was like he was never there." Like, how do you? It's such a weird story.
He put those lions.
Yeah, like did he have like a storage unit somewhere? Like, where did he put all these things? Like my entire house was gone, and then when I come back, it's all back. And again, this is kind of like I said, we're kind of building the mythos of Prince with these stories. Like there's these things like him being on the New Girl for that Super Bowl special, because he really liked the New Girl, and the most famous story to come out of that is he's the best ping pong player ever. And 2, he said Kim Kardashian is not going to be on this episode. Because it was
the part I remember is there.
It was like,
was it supposed to be at like a Kardashian party or something?
No, it was at.
Oh Prince, no, I won't be.
They all go to Prince's house for a party, and then he plays ping pong with Jesse, and he has a conversation with someone else, and they said we're gonna just flock the house of celebrities. It's the Super Bowl party episode. It's like a big 100th anniversary episode, and they gave the list of all the celebrities to Prince, and Prince said no, I'm not having no, and they were gone. And like he's a very famous, he's very fun and flirty, and like one of the things that I really enjoy about him is his acting, which is weird. Like again, we talked about Bowie. But the closest thing to him was Elvis. Like he starred in movies that he created and he built, and Elvis kind of had that same thing. Only Prince's movies were good in a weird way. Like if you've not seen Purple Rain, first off, you have to see it. It's one of the 10 best films of the 80s. It's one of the 10 best soundtracks of all time. And like I told Virginia before the podcast, if you ask me who the 10 best film villains of all time are, number 7 or 8 is definitely Morris Day from Purple Rain. He's, first off, just the image of these 2 short men hitting each other and getting into fist fights and everything is insane. But he's so good at it. The colors on it, the music, it's the greatest soundtrack. It's, to me, it's that, and it's
soundtrack.
Yeah.
But I'd say, not to push back, but have you seen Under the Cherry Moon?
Yes. I love it.
I saw it a long time ago, and I thought it,
No, it's not the movie you follow up.
I had to watch it after years of reading Mad Magazine where they made fun of it. So it was like, It might be a prejudice, but I just was like, oh, it's kind of corny.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, most importantly, it is the film debut of Kristin Scott Thomas. Like he literally, he's someone who invented stars. Like again, Carmen Electra, Sheila E., Apollonia, all these women that he found, like basically a pile of rocks. And he said, look, like that. And Kristin Scott Thomas is one of them, a major film actress. She's in, The English Patient and tons of other movies. Her first film is Under the Cherry Moon. It's black and white.
It's beautiful. I love it.
It's beautiful to look at. It's French. It's his homage to kind of French New Wave without truly understanding French New Wave. At the same time, that period brought us the song Kiss. You got the look and all these kind of interesting songs that were. They were not Prince and the Revolution songs. Mm-hmm. They were completely different. And I can't think of more things that are amazing as in like when Apollonia is kind of our Alice in Wonderland figure in Purple Rain, and she kind of she's walking through, and then she comes upon this place where Prince is singing Let's Go Crazy. Like that's the introduction to Prince as a film star, and the song is so good. Every song the Morris Day song is like. In my life, if you told me Morris Day is called. He wants you to be his new Lamont, who just holds his mirror for him. I would do that in a second. I would quit teaching. I would quit everything. I would just be Lamont for the rest of my life. That's the dream. But like that movie is so perfectly choreographed, and the songs are so perfect. And Apollonia, like I said earlier, is like this Six Cosby kid. Like she's so multiracial in this kind of this perfect 80s way. And again, he thought about these things. Because again, to me, as much as I'm going to say this episode is about myth of Prince, it's about control. This is a man that always was in control of everything. You do not learn to play every instrument. So when you record an album, it's everything, you know? So he kind of had the control. I mean, you have Graffiti Bridge, which is basically a sequel. But again, there's no one that in 1984 with Purple Rain the album, Purple Rain the film, and him just being iconic is kind of like maybe the greatest year any artist has ever had in a certain way. It's next to probably Bob Fosse, I would say. Bob Fosse probably beats him in the best year ever category. You know, winning 3 of the 4 awards for directing in one year.
Right.
We have to do Fosse, by the way. Let's put that down. Bob Fosse. Let's mark him down for October. But you know, like I said, he's this mythic figure. Like you can't imagine. Like he's 1984, 6 years after he started his career, he had a couple hits. And he said, "I want to make a movie, and I'm going to do the soundtrack, and I'm going to write it. I'm going to do everything." And he has this weird relationship with his father figure in the movie, and like you're wondering if that's real. It's an absolutely spellbinding movie. Looks beautiful. Under the Cherry Moon, beautiful looking. Maybe watch it with no volume. Maybe, I don't know. It's his homage to French New Wave and Graffiti Bridge, just kind of where it falls off. But he is. It's all about control. It's all about power. And to me, the great gauntlet moment for him, the moment that I love more than anything, it's maybe my favorite night in the history of music, is his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Right.
Because it's not planned, but he's on the same night as ZZ Top, and then he's also the same night that George Harrison's on. George Harrison posthumously is put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist. And for him, they do While My Guitar Gently Weeps. And if you've not seen this recording, I sent it to Virginia about a week ago, I think. And usually for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, you can jump on and do other things. Usually there's a jam session at the end. But Prince is like, I'm there for While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is a song he did with Eric Clapton. The two of them, it's one of those great guitar songs. And like Tom Petty's on stage, Jeff Lynne from ELO's on stage, Steve Winwood's playing organ, and then George Harrison's dumb skateboarding son's on stage, and then Prince is there. And again, it's the night that Prince got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's all these things, and he puts on a 5-minute guitar solo in the middle of it's the history of rock and roll guitar, and it's Prince doing it. It's not like it's everything. He does Chuck Berry. He does all these homages to all these guitar legends within the context of the song. At one point, he falls backwards into the crowd where his gigantic bodyguard just holds him up while he's playing guitar. He changes the way he holds the guitar. It's basically saying, if you did not think I deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if you don't understand what I mean to music, now you do.
Yeah.
It's my favorite live performance. I've shown it to people who don't know who Prince is, and afterward they just go on a deluge of listening to every song possible. Yeah. And it's one, if you've never seen it, just look up Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Prince, you'll get it. Tom Petty is beside himself, just looking over, like he's like, what's George Harrison's son is freaked out on a certain level. Jeff Lynne doesn't recognize any of this. Steve Winwood's having a great time, but it's like 5 minutes. And it's like he's already had his own solo production. Like I already am Prince. I've done Dove's Cry. I've done 1999. Galley, we gather here. It's all awesome. But then he comes on and says, and he just does. It's mind blowing. Yeah. And he's a mind blowing artist. And that's one of the reasons why I was really happy that he's our second artist. Like we had to do Bowie first. And one of the things interesting about Prince as we talk about him is, yes, he changed. He changed musicians all the time. He changed out bands. He changed out who was his muse. But it's always Prince music. Like, no matter how wide-varying, it's still based in this funk. It's still based in just being the best musician possible. So one of the things that he is famous for is having muses and then writing songs for other people. Mm-hmm. And do you have any particular songs that he gave to other people that you love more than anything else?
Well, I like what we talked about. I did not even know till I was adult that Monday was originally a Prince song.
Yes.
And I loved the Bangles when I was a kid. I saw them perform on Dick Clark's New Year's Eve when I was at a friend's house. I was allowed to watch their videos too. Mm-hmm. There were like some videos are like, no, you can't watch that. Although it changed if it was like, well, we really like this artist. Like you can't watch this because I don't like the way they present women, unless it's David Lee Roth and Van Halen, because that's just fun and cartoony, you know. Yeah. Although I think I'll be like, but everyone loved the Bangles, and you know, I first heard "Nothing Compares to You" with Sinead O'Connor singing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we started, you know, I started listening to more of the Prince stuff for it that I heard his version, and they're both good. But it's just such a different feel between the two. I don't.
So I mean, all Prince stuff, his version of Nothing Compares to You. There's definitely I'm gonna miss your body to it, whereas the Sinead O'Connor version is like I'm gonna miss your soul.
Yeah, that's a good.
To me, I think the way they shot the video, and again that bald head and her that one tear and everything, it's like I've lost the love of my life. And the Prince version, it's like I've lost the best lay of my life, which is, you know, no knock against Prince for that. But yeah, you mentioned Susanna Hoff and Manic Monday. There's one lyric in that song that always makes me know that it's Prince, which is "Baby, let's go make some noise," which is such a Prince lyric. Oh. It's such a Prince lyric. He was absolutely he wanted Susanna Hoff to be, who was the lead singer of the Bangles, to be his next muse, and the band hated it. I think this is always the fight with this band. Like if you watch their behind the music, it is how long can we keep Susanna Hoff happy in this band? And they have that one Muppety like guitar player who like sings like walks like an Egyptian, who is so sullen and sad at the point they do the behind the music, because she, you know, it's like 15 years after Susanna have left the band and married Jay Roach, and she has his own career. But it's just like, how long can we keep the girl on the farm? And then Prince shows up and like, here's the song. And he really thought that was it. Like she was going to leave the band. And again, they didn't last much longer, but it's such a great song, first of all. And then we had the shock of our lives. And I told you yesterday, I had no idea that he wrote Stand Back for Stevie Nicks. Or co-wrote it.
Yeah, I didn't. I somehow missed that until you were telling me. And then I'm like, wait, what? And she like wrote it, and she's like, I'm stuck. She's like, I want to sound like Little Red Corvette. And he's like, yeah.
Okay. Once you hear her say that, it makes utter sense.
Yeah. I mean, right when you read that, you start playing and you're like, oh.
Yeah, this is the magic. This is the magic of Prince again. She's like in the recording studio with her boyfriend Jimmy Iovino, and they're working on the most important song of her solo career. It's not even close. And she's having problems with it. And she goes, I just wanted to sound like Little Red Corvette. And Jimmy Iovino's like, what's this called? Prince. They call it Prince. He shows up like magically. He's just there. Like he just appears out of nowhere, like the ethereal energy, and just co-writes a song and makes it the amazing song that it is. It's mind blowing. That's so
smart, because I might have been like, oh, I need you to co-write a song. Prince co-writes with no one, but it needs to sound like you. Okay.
I wanted to start. I want to rip off your song with you. Like this is something that would lead like the lead singer of Creedence to get sued, like by signing like himself. Like Prince. Again, one of the things when you learn about how many songs and how many artists he infected, it really makes you affected. Excuse me. He never infected anyone, folks, that we know of. The artist I never thought of until this, again, doing the research and figuring stuff out, watching all 3 films. Oh my God, listening to all the music. I never put the relation of the major American artist that he's closest to, because you're going to say George Clinton, you're going to say Chuck Berry, you're going to talk about Michael Jackson. It's Bruce Springsteen, because no one has ever written more songs for other artists, and had different bands and had needed different sounds for different things, and had like they're the same guy. They're the same person in a lot of ways. And the thing that makes me think of this the most is when he died April 16th, 21st, 2016, when he died, the day after, Bruce Springsteen, again, you can see this on YouTube, does a utterly hellacious, just perfect cover of Purple Rain. And the whole stadium isn't purple, and he sings it as a tribute to this man who just died. Because I really think I'm gonna cry. This is the 4th episode where I've cried. He lost a kindred. He lost someone that got it in the same way that he got it. Because it's about giving away stuff. Could Bruce Springsteen have sung "Here Comes the Night" better than Patti Smith and made it a hit? Absolutely. But this is for you. This song is for you. Just the same way Prince said he could have sung Manic Monday. It'd been great.
Yeah.
But he was like, this is for you. These are there's not a lot of artists that do that. Bowie's another one with All the Young Dudes. But pause this, watch 2 things on YouTube. Watch the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then watch Bruce Springsteen's cover of Purple Rain. It is absolutely transcendent. And I really do think those are 2 artists that really learned that, like, it's about giving back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you give music more than you take? And again, for Prince, that's definitely true because he became the 2nd most sampled artist in the history of rap. And that's something that you talked about, is like, in listening to all this music, you hear these loops. That's this.
My first rap album was MC Hammer's "Please Hammer, Don't Hurt Him," and there's literally 2 sampled Prince songs in that album. And one is his first hit, "Soft and Wet," and that's also the name of Hammers. And then the other one, I think, is "When Doves Cry," which is sampled for "Pray," which was, I think, my favorite song from that album.
Yeah.
Again, I was a big church kid, and I still love a gospel beat. And give me people in choir robes, and I'm a happy gal.
The thing that he talked about, he did an interview with Chris Rock, VH1, maybe 94, 95, where he said George Clinton looked at him and said, they're done sampling me. Because again, if you listen to early hip hop, there's so many George Clinton loops. And he said, and Clinton literally said to Prince, they're done with me, they're moving on to you. Like, he knew it. These smart artists understand that.
Right before the album,
right before everything was Prince. And again, he gave so much back to music. Not even just his own music, but again, Chaka Khan's "I Feel For You" is a Prince cover. I think "Compares to You." Jungle Love he gave to Morris Day and the Time. I think he gave more than that. Like, Jack White is also like that. There's this song you find out that Jack White wrote and gave to artists. So again, just an unbelievable, phenomenal artist. He's in my top 5. I mean, easily. There's him, there's Dylan, there's Springsteen, and then there's 2 that kind of go in and out, but who knows. So let's get to the albums. We have to get to if you're not first, you're last. Let's talk about his first album, For You. What did you think of it?
I thought it was neat. I do think it's a very funky. There's a lot of funk. There's a bit of disco in it. I think you come right out the gate. There's a lot of other people's first albums, like we talked about with Bowie. You can kind of see as it goes them figuring themselves out.
Yeah.
But I feel like Prince is just right off the bat, except for like him experimenting different genres, but still incorporating. That this is a Prince.
Yeah.
He's not. There isn't like, oh, his album's so drastically different. It's so weird that this happened. It's just, this is it. You know who he is.
Yeah. It's all there.
Yeah.
Everything that he would do for the rest of his career is all there, including song titles that should not be song titles, like "Soft and Wet."
And he starts out being very scandalous, right? There is no a little pop to ease the people into it. And we'll do these little winks. It's just right there.
It's just Soft and Wet, and then he goes right, it's because 1978 Miles are probably having a heart attack. He writes the next "Just As Long As We're Together," which is almost as Teddy Pendergrass, like "Just As Long As We're Together" almost feels like a Luther Vandross song, 7 Years Too Early. Like, it has this. It's amazing. The album is self-produced by him in 1978. His first hit would not come with Until I Want to Be Your Love, which is the next album. That's when he really broke. The album reviews for You is not. They're not like, we knew this guy was to be the greatest, which it rarely is. Again, there's few first albums I could think of where everything's there. I think this one's all there. I just don't think we were ready for it yet. I think there's probably a lot of people like, well, it just sounds like George Clinton. Like, do we need another George Clinton clone? You already have 7 of those. You know, we have the Gap. We already have the Gap band. Why do we need Prince? But it's all there. And again, this album is spectacular. Like I said, Soft and Wet, Just As Long as We're Together. And it's all there. It's all there. And then he does, he just goes on this run of just amazing albums, Super Bowl performances, Grammy performances, changing his name, all that. And then we get to his last album, his 39th album, which is Hit and Run Part 2. So this is a second of 2 albums. I had never listened to this album before. As much as I am a Prince fan, I kind of stick to like that 80s and then, of course, the Diamonds and Pearl era, which again, guess what, folks? That's a sex reference. Just assume it.
I think I had up to Crystal Ball because I had. So, and it's actually, I don't think any of those songs made it.
Yeah.
But it is actually a pretty decent album. It's not as, there's not like a dance hits.
No.
But it's a good CD to have playing in the back.
It's great. And again, Baltimore is the song that starts it off, which is a Freddie Gray tribute. This happened just after the Freddie Gray murder in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So he wrote the song Baltimore about him. It's a big band feel. There are basically a giant jazz band with the drums and guitar and bass that you really hear on a Prince album. There's literally there's 5 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 saxophones in this album. The songs that came out to be Screwdriver is a ridiculously good song. And the fact that it did not become a hit is amazing to me. It's a bit Jungle Lovey to me. It's got a feel of Jungle Love to me, but it's so good. And then Rock and Roll Love Affair is also a phenomenal song.
I almost feel like it's not that the album was bad or that it was almost like sometimes artists hit a point, even though they're still going, where people get nostalgic for them when they're still there.
Yeah.
I think that happened a lot with Prince. Also because, like you said, except for certain appearances, he really hadn't been out that much since then. Yeah. Like his Super Bowl was
05, 04?
No, it was after that because I saw it at when I was living in Atlanta. I thought maybe it was. I graduated for 05. Well, anyways, it was definitely before 2000.
It was a decade before he died, at least. I would say.
Yeah, it's still talked about, but it was almost like I feel like when they started doing that, it's almost if you get inducted with some people.
Yeah.
It almost is seen as a retirement, but it's not. The people are like, "Oh, that's so nice," and they're still. A lot of them are still performing, so things overlooked a little more.
I think what's interesting is like when we talked about that last David Bowie album, there was a sense of completeness and doneness to it. Like again, I said, he's that one song, I Can't Give You Everything. This just feels like he's gonna make 5 more albums that are all Prince albums, and every song's good, and every song is funky, and every song's got ridiculous guitar and production on it. There was nothing about this album that was different than the 38 before it. They're all great. They're all really good. Shockingly enough, there's one song on here that is about sex, When She Comes, but he spells it COMES, folks. Calm down. So of course he did. Like, of course, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, I need one album. He was also Screwdriver for that matter too. But did he grow? Yes, but he was always going to be Prince, even though that there was a 7-year run where he wasn't Prince. He was the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah.
He was always Prince. There's none of these songs that I couldn't just drop into his first album and they wouldn't sound weird. They would sound fine.
Let's go. Wait, wasn't the thing, because I'm literally drawing this from because there's just so much going on, was because his record company tried to own his name? That's like
he was talking about ownership of songs and everything. And again, we're dealing with this now. Like why does Taylor Swift have her own versions of all her songs on Spotify? It's because someone bought her songs. And she's the first person to ever think, well, I'll just re-record them and then they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? And Prince did the same thing with the artist symbol and everything. It's like, you can't own this. Mm-hmm. And again, it's about control. Again, it's about control. There are so many artists that talk about their first record album contract absolutely screwing them. It's the story of music. Some Irving Azoff character going, kid, you're going to be a star. And then here's your contract. You make 5 cents on a dollar for every album. Again, not to talk too much about behind the music, but the TLC one.
Yeah, I just watching that not too long. Like,
yeah,
I think on my TikTok or something. I was like, I remember this, and I remember the Lifetime remake or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That did.
Well, Left Eye in the middle of it does about 2-minute perfect explanation of why album contracts suck.
Yeah.
And why, again, you're dealing with, it's just like baseball, it's just like basketball kids. You're talking about people that are most desperate, that just want to have someone say, you're worth it. And then when you do, guess what? I'm going to take 95 cents a dollar.
Family. That's the big, you'll be able to, all this time they put into it. The thing that's disappointing with TLC too is Pebbles was the producer, right? When they wasn't her. And I remember when she had a top 40 hit on KC, and I really liked her music. So it's like, how could you? You know, it's like, it was the dark side, you know.
It's weird because, you know, you look at these old artists that had the same screw job, and then they develop. Island Records, for example, is the one that was created to stop this. Yeah. Right? It was artist for artist, but guess what? They still screwed the artist, and it's kind of this like old musician with, you know, with the singer like, you got to pay your dues, kid. You know, the first 3 albums are gonna be nothing, and then you make your money on tour. And
it's like they sign it and they don't look into it because okay, you make 36 cents on this, and when you think about it, does add up, but they don't realize they're being charged for promotion, they're being charged for wardrobe, and it's like, well, you don't have to travel to an island to make a video. You could just make it here. Like, you know, that's why you do see a lot in the early 2000s and everything, just more simple videos for a time.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still getting charged because you still have to pay for permits, you still have to pay for extras, but it's like, okay, we don't have to do all these fancy things. Or I don't know, maybe that's why Diddy always had people recording in that colander looking thing, like making some money back for it.
It's interesting because we saw the rise and the fall of the video girl. Mm-hmm. The fame of being in a music video. We saw Tawny Kitaen. We saw Bobby Brown. Then we saw the hip hop ones and all of the, and then it went away. And all of a sudden, in that void comes OnlyFans, and that's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that this thing that allowed women to be empowered to make money while being sexualized and everything. I doubt Tawny Kitaen at the end of her life felt used. She doesn't appear to be a woman who ever looked like Bobby Brown definitely did, but Tawny Kitaen was like, and I think
she did struggle with substance abuse, so there was something there.
It was the 80s though.
Before that, I actually read Bobby Brown's memoir. I know we're getting track, and her whole thing was basically she just fell into everything because she was so cute. Like, oh, you should sign for a pageant. Oh, yeah, what's gonna happen? You win. Oh, you should try for this. Oh, what's gonna, like I remember seeing her on Start, and I think that's her problem is almost that like he didn't have to work.
Yeah, but it's interesting because Prince.
But yeah,
to get back to Prince, but
that's where we started.
To get back to Prince, he did invent these females. Carmen Electra is famous. Her name is given to her by Prince. That's why her name is so interesting. Is because Prince thought of it. And again, Strawberry and Cream, Diamond and Pearl, however you want to say it, they became famous. Apollonia became famous. He became famous.
Even his first wife, Mayte, he wrote the one he wrote, Beautiful Girl. She actually problematic.
Yeah.
He first noticed her when she was a 13-year-old belly dancer with her performing family. And to me, it's like, okay, it's good that you waited, but it's not great.
There's grooming involved, absolutely.
But, that was his first muse, I guess you would say. Yeah. And her book about their life is actually very well done. It is not, and who cares if it was a crash grab or not? She gave spent her youth guy. I think she can write any story she wants, but she did tell she's the one who told Truth, like, no, after he had this back issue. And he had never done drugs.
Right.
So and this was when we had the opioid epidemic that, we're still dealing with today. That is why we don't have any more albums. And she said she knew that there was a problem because he was in sweatpants. The man never owned sweatpants before. Like you say, he played basketball in full Prince gear.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, sweatpants, which sounds silly, but it's like, having seen, having had relatives that you could see when things weren't going
deterioration.
Their hair always done perfect. And now, it's all long. You're like, oh, when you're wearing a nightgown at 3:00, you can tell like there's not something right.
No, it's a tragic loss. It really is. And when you're looking at, again, he is, like I said, this is a show about change and everything. What I find interesting about him is that everything around him changed, but he didn't.
Yeah, that is.
I think that's kind of what's interesting about him of all the figures. I think the same could almost be said of Kubrick. Is that the world changed around? I think there's a very trueness to that the world changed around him, but he didn't, and that what made him such an iconoclast and someone that could do what he did. And like I said, the word of the day, children, is control. I'm going to do one of those things where the word control comes in my hands like that, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a man who was in control until he wasn't, because someone took it away from him.
Yeah, that is actually the perfect way to put it.
Yeah. So I don't think I should say any more after that. I think we need to end it on that. I want to just cut the episode right after I say that. Again, unbelievable artist, one of my favorites. And then next month, we're going to another one of my favorite artists of all time. And that is the incomparable Billy Wilder.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to kind of go all over the place with him because his first and last films are not perfect. We're going to definitely talk about The Apartment. We're going to definitely talk about Some Like It Hot. Yes. Oh my God, are we going to talk about Sabrina? Oh my God, we have to talk about Sabrina.
I know it'll be weird because, as you can tell with this Prince episode, we just stay to a topic and we never.
Oh yeah, no, we never do that. And then Facing the Crowd are probably the four we're going to look at the most. I would say those, and then Sunset Boulevard. So I'm going to say, oh my God, I have way too much to say about some. We might have to do a separate one about Sunset Boulevard. But then I want to thank everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to You're Not First, You're Last and the Shmee Network, as it's called. I'd like to thank Virginia for always being the bestest hostess with the mostest I could ever possibly have. It's been fantastic. Keep it going with Billy Wilder next month, and then we'll have a very special surprise for the beginning of summer. Just saying. Yep. We kind of we plan this pretty well. We know what we're doing. We don't just start off the day going, what should we do today? We definitely plan it. So again, be sure to like and subscribe to If You're Not First, You're Last. And again, next month will be Billy Wilder month. Have a great rest of the month.